See everybody. And Jim mentioned the room wasn't full, but we were going for quality, not quantity. So we appreciate you joining us. But as Jim had introduced, Beep is an autonomous mobility as a service provider. We deploy electric shuttles in real live use cases where we're moving passengers in these first mile, last mile type extensions of micromobility. So I'll give you a little introduction to the business. I'll share with you some use cases where we have had incredible impact on removing carbon emissions by removing cars off of the roadway. So for us, it's about safety, it's about sustainability, and frankly, it's about truly delivering against some of the mobility inequities that we have, most specifically in these urban city centers and extensions of mass transit. But as a business, we're very different. If you hear a lot about autonomous mobility, I would tell you, and you've probably read the articles, I think we were going to be on all of our roads, driverless, anywhere you want to go at any speed, any time of the day. I think that was supposed to be 2 years ago, according to our friend Elon Musk. And with all the advancements that are being made, I think one of the things that is proving out in the area of autonomous mobility, and that's certainly reflected in the success we've had as a business, is that it's going to be proven out in these more controlled speed, geo-fenced use cases where you're delivering against specific routes, you're solving for a specific mobility challenge, and really extending the access to transportation in certain again, geo-fenced fixed route type scenarios. I think why that's important is with all the advancements of technology, it's going to be limited by speed and by distance and by route for the very foreseeable future. And so our business is all about bringing these multi-passenger, 10 to 12 passenger type shuttles to market in these electric form factors that are truly out there delivering now across 19 public road deployments, tens of thousands of passengers, tens of thousands of miles, and really, I think, starting to advance into the next level of autonomy where we'll be able to extend the operating domain of these vehicles quite successfully. As a business, for what it's worth, we, I think, learned early that although we're technology entrepreneurs advancing the use of these platforms in these scenarios that I've described, we also deliver this in a kind of a turnkey service. We found it important with the lack of experience that public transit or certainly even campus environments and other users of these micromobility solutions, there's not a lot of know-how or expertise out there in the fields to maintain, deploy, and manage these types of vehicles. So our business is about providing a turnkey mobility as a service offering. We manage the regulatory approvals, we commission the vehicles, we acquire the vehicles from various suppliers, support, manage, and maintain these routes on a day in, day out basis, delivering a really high level of service, which is critical. A lot of testing of autonomous vehicles going on. To us, the focus is really the customer experience, the reliability of that service, and is it in fact delivering something that people are going to utilize and adopt. I hit on this earlier, but I'll reinforce it because I think it is incredibly critical as it relates to the purpose of autonomous technologies, at large. One is this is about improving safety. 38,000 people perished on our roadways here in the U.S. last year, 94% of that caused by human distraction or impairment. People can argue, was it 94%, 84%? It's the single largest reason we have accidents and fatalities. And autonomous technologies aren't going to eliminate that overnight because not everybody's going to be in an autonomous platform. But the data is proving out in these controlled environments where we're avoiding traffic accidents because they can perceive something before it happens, because we can connect to infrastructure that's looking down corridors and projecting someone running a red light. Those types of kind of complete areas of perception that we can pull into these vehicles, there is undoubtedly going to be a major impact in saving lives, eliminating accidents, and obviously improving our roadways across the board. And in our case, it's not only about eliminating those scenarios of accidents, it's also about taking road congestion out of the equation. Not out of the equation, but certainly reducing it in these areas where you have these high volumes that create additional risks and create significant environmental risk for us as well. Public transit is the single largest cause of of carbon emissions in our world. And with the deployment of these electric shuttles, we're, as I suggested, displacing large buses that typically work in some of these downtown corridors because they don't have these smaller form factors, doing the demand planning and demand management to make sure the vehicles are where they need to be based on the profiles of users, not just fixed routes that run in circles at specific times. So it's a lot more than just getting the vehicles on the road. It's about really doing the things we need to do to extend these capabilities across the board. Another kind of just impact statement. I mean, our company as a business now has under contract the single largest private and the single largest public deployment of these vehicles. The JTA up just north of us here in Jacksonville is going to be deploying, what is going to be recognized and is already recognized as one of the world's most innovative activities around transforming transportation in a downtown area. Really would encourage you to look at that and the impact that that's going to have in extending mobility in Jacksonville. Right here in Orlando, the Lake Nona community, who is where our headquarters is based, has 8 routes now that we're servicing across 7 days a week, about 12-hour schedules a day, and managing those again to fulfill the needs of people that don't have alternative transportation and people that are using the services as an alternative to their personal transportation. Just a couple of these use cases, and you can see some of the statistics here. Probably one of the most important metrics, or the 2 most important metrics we track, are the ridership itself, how many people are using the service, and then how many vehicles are being taken off the roadway as a result of that. That has a really significant impact and return on investment for private communities. That can reduce impact fees, that can reduce parking structure requirements in some of the centralized areas if they can provide these forms of alternative transportation. So very meaningful impact in ROI for these communities that are deploying these. Pinellas County, across, I guess we're halfway across the state now, so the other half of the way across the state, have done something incredibly unique. The Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority took pilots to 4 major cities. So we started in St. Petersburg, went to Clearwater, went to Dunedin, and are now transitioning to Tarpon Springs over about a 2-year period where the ridership, the adoption has been incredibly positive. And I think the use of the technology now is something that they're evaluating for the long term. So proving these out in these public transit type environments is incredibly important to our success. And last but not least, another good example of success with a project that we were fortunate to do at Yellowstone Park last summer. And this is a great example. Those of you that have been to some of our national parks, road congestion is probably the single largest issue that they face, and how can they provide transportation from remote camping areas up to welcome centers and some of those centralized areas where you can get some goods and services, access to goods and services. Moved 10,000 people over about a 90-day pilot, did full surveying and feedback to the National Park Service, on not only the acceptance and adoption, but also the impact that had in Yellowstone. And that's a program that you're going to see growing across our national parks. I guess there's 100 of them, probably 40 national parks that I think this is really most applicable to. And last but not least, they asked us to give you a lessons learned. So here's my lessons learned for you. In case you didn't know you were here to get lessons learned, now you know. But first, I've mentioned this a couple of times. The technology's new. Some people are very apprehensive. You're not just going to jump on an autonomous vehicle and ride it without some level of education and awareness. Something we take very seriously as we enter any of these communities is doing the training with the first responders, the police, fire, rescue, making sure the community understands these are being incorporated into a system, that is going to be safe and well overseen. Two is the things we need to do to engage the community in the education process. So we have attendants on board all the vehicles today, although they're operating in autonomous mode. We do have occasion where manual intervention is required. In a couple of years, that'll be remote manual intervention. Today, it's with an attendant on board, but more importantly, they're ambassadors for the technologies in the communities to get people more comfortable with the use of these. And we have seen time and time again, the longer they're out there, the more people that become recurring riders and the more they'll get comfortable with it once they truly are attendantless. So I think that evolution is critical. Certainly understanding the limits of the technology, and I think this is where we have done ourselves a little bit of a disservice in the industry, is setting the expectations too high. This technology has to walk before it runs. It's, a simple way to look at it, but I think the accurate way to look at it. And so hence the need to focus on lower speed, controlled environments, and then ultimately expand the operating domain of these vehicles. We hear a lot about CV to X, the connection of the vehicles to other vehicles and to the infrastructure around it. Obviously, before you can navigate traffic signals and crosswalks and be able to identify emergency vehicles and things of that nature, you have to have the ability to connect that into the vehicle itself so that it could perceive it just like a human would and respond accordingly. And we've got tests going on in multiple locations to prove out the use of that technology. Today, with attendants on board, we've got some latitude. With attendants off board, you can't have the ability to override, to enter an intersection and things of that nature. And that's going to be really, really critical to the ultimate adoption of these technologies. Education I've hit on, so I won't repeat it, but it is an ongoing process. And I think what we do, not only in the communities we serve, but in industry across the board is absolutely critical. And then last but not least is the real importance of working at all levels of government. The vehicles themselves are governed by the US DOT and NHTSA. So ensuring that what we do in the testing of these vehicles, we're completely transparent and sharing the information, experiences, and learnings from those to help improve the use of these platforms across the board in public transportation. And then at the state and local levels, it's equally as important, whether it's cities working with them on the infrastructure side of it, or even in the states with some of the legislation and other initiatives that are going to be critical to the expanded, safe expansion of these vehicles across the board. So appreciate the opportunity to be here. I don't know if I stayed within my 10 minutes, but there you have it.